And hello and welcome to another episode of Tea with Jamie. I am Jamie. Oh, I'm spilling my tea everywhere because I decided to do a new setup today where I'm not just sat at my desk, and maybe my video can get a little further back so you can get more of my animations, and so that I don't hit the space button and cancel the recording again halfway through. But here is my cup of tea, and I'm taking my first sip. That's a good cup of tea today. I think I've finally managed to get the perfect brewing ratio. Years ago, this is all tea related, years ago I actually measured out with a really micro scale exactly how I made a cup of tea to the exact point. How much water I put in, how much milk I put in, how much sugar I put in, and the brew time that I naturally went to each time that I brewed a cup of tea, just to discover if I could make it the same every single time. And I'll tell you something really interesting. It actually changed country to country that I was in each time. I took my little micro scale with me. But that's just me. I'm a little weird. I do things like that because, I'm curious about life and I find life interesting. And I guess I'm a little bit of a hobby scientist at heart, and I just like to see how things work and just like to see differences in things. But that's unrelated to what I'm going to talk about today on my podcast. Today, I am going to talk about creativity, especially regarding my music and my music, like producing my music and putting my music out there and all that stuff. I'm going to talk about that today, and maybe it'll be of interest to some, maybe it won't be of interest to others. My last podcast was over 60 minutes long, and I highly doubt that this podcast is going to be 60 minutes long, but I'm keeping up with my weekly podcasting. So every single Saturday, I still don't have a defined time, I will be releasing a podcast, and for everyone to enjoy, and for me to enjoy, and for me to talk about my thoughts and my feelings and all that stuff. That's what my podcast is about. It's about my thoughts and my feelings. I listen back to some of my other podcasts, and sometimes I'm like, oh, should you have said that? Oh, should you have said that? But at the same time, this podcast is just my free-range thoughts. I don't know who really listens to it at the moment. I know I've got some people on Instagram who listen to it, and they send me messages every time that I release a new one and how they relate. And stuff like that. And it's really quite amazing. Last week, after I released my previous podcast about friendship and LA and all that stuff, I actually had a really long conversation with one of my other friends who told me that they experienced quite a lot of similar feelings to me. And it was such an enlightening experience. I really had a conversation with him, and I got to know him a little bit better than I have done. And I've known him for quite a while. And it's really interesting what happens when people are vulnerable and they relate to something you're saying, and they have the courage to reach out to you and talk to you about it. Because a lot of people go through their lives thinking similar thoughts that I have, but they just never air them. And I understand why, because it's hard to air them. Sometimes I definitely think twice about some of the things that I say on this podcast and whether I should have aired them in the first place. But regardless to all that, let's start with my week. I have had a very, very busy week again. Now I am working 2 different jobs, and it's good for me, honestly, because if I have one single day off, I'm kind of like a bit at a loss of what to do. I tend to do things pretty quickly, what I like to do pretty quickly, and get them done really quickly, and it gives me hours and hours in the day to just kind of stew and to try and figure out how to fill my time. And everyone's busy, I can't see people all the time, so a lot of the time I'm left on my own, and filling that time sometimes is just really complicated. And I'm left feeling a little bit bored. So I'm happy to be working so much. It's great, and I'm making more money than I have for a while, and I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, and it's great. I'm happy about it. But today I've got a shift at another job doing bartending. I've got a shift downtown, but it's at 7:30 p.m. So I have all this day to sit and do my stuff. And as I say, I've been busy all week, so I haven't really had time in the week to do any of this stuff. So I'm glad that I can sit down with my cup of tea and have a chat with everyone else who's listening to this, and really importantly, a chat with myself. Today, it's been raining. It's been raining in LA, and it's pretty as hell. My plants have droplets on them, and it's really, really pretty, and they're also getting really well watered, and some of my plants have been struggling with the sunshine, and they're feeling a little happier today because it's quite overcast and dark. I'm currently staring out of my window and I see my hummingbird feeder is empty, so that's another task that I must do today, because the hummingbirds must be fed. And they'll tell you themselves, if I don't feed them when I go outside, they start attacking me, and I'm like, okay, I'll feed you, don't worry, and I'll put out my little hummingbird feeder. But yes, I had a day off today, and I'm working much later, so I have a lot of the day to spare, and it's raining. And one of the songs which I want to record and release next year, with a little mini album, is called Raining in LA, and I was waiting for a rainy day to record it, because part of my philosophy about creativity is outside circumstances really affect your inner circumstances. And if I wrote a song about raining in LA and I tried to perform it on a sunny day, maybe it wouldn't have the same amount of content or energy that I wanted in the song in the first place. So I waited for a raining day, and it was about 11:30 a.m. and I was like, okay, let's get this started. And I decided to video record the whole process, so I'll be uploading that to my YouTube as well at some point, and it'll be like a behind the scenes sort of experience of me producing the whole thing and all this stuff. But to produce my music and to set about making a plan for it, I really just I have to go through a set of things. So I woke up, I've been busy all week, and I needed to get my head straight. So the first thing that I do is tidy my room. And as I'm tidying my room, I'm like, hey, I really want to perform this song on video, and I don't have any chairs other than my squeaky computer chairs. So as I'm tidying my room, I see something that I can turn into a stool, and I'm like, hey, I've got some spare wood. Maybe I'll turn this into a tool, into something that I can use, into a stool. And so I go about getting all my old tools out while tidying my house, and then I go outside and I craft this stool, and literally all I had to do was cut off a piece of wood and sand it down so it fits into like this gap of this other piece of furniture that I have, which I'm not really using. But I'm just saying, like, that's the way that my brain goes. I have this list of things that I need to do to be able to accomplish a goal, and within that list, because of my ADD mind or something like that, all of a sudden I have 20 or so sublists of things which I put on top of myself to be able to get anything done. But I actually managed to do all of it in 3 hours. So I tidied my room, I made this little stool for me to sit on for when I'm performing on my guitar so I'm comfortable. A video recorded me setting up all my mics, and then I sat down to play and perform my song called Raining in LA. And it's one of my favorite songs I've ever written. It's all about how it can be raining and you can feel alone and like you've gone through life a lot, and all it takes sometimes is for a hand on your shoulder, or someone that cares about you and loves you, to put a hand on your shoulder and bring you up and warm your soul. If your soul has felt cold for a long time, sometimes it just takes that one moment for someone to put their hand on you and warm you up. And so the song is all about that, and it's a beautiful song. I mean, I say it's a beautiful song. You'll have to see when I release it finally. But yeah, and so I was recording it, and it all went really well. I've got a bit of a headache today because I decided to drink a few tequilas while playing a video game with one of my friends yesterday. So I've got a little bit of a headache because apparently I can't handle booze whatsoever anymore. But yeah, so I was a little tired, but it went really well. Sometimes when I'm, as you've heard, if you've listened to previous podcasts, sometimes when I'm trying to be creative, I find it really, really difficult to be kind to myself throughout the whole process. But maybe because I had it all on camera and I was explaining what I do step by step, including of how I get into the headspace of a performance and stuff like that, maybe that just calmed me down in general. But I felt no nerves about this song. It's a very calm, relaxing song, and it really soothes me every time I every time I sing it. And I think that's what I'm trying to explain here in this podcast, is about what is creativity? Like, what is it for? Why do I write music? Well, for me, creativity, and especially in regards to music, creativity changes between each medium for me specifically, but especially in regards to my music is my subconscious speaking back to me. I write songs when I'm in a really emotional state about something specific, or I'm really sitting in a memory or an emotional state. And when I say sitting in a memory, I mean having a memory playing in my head and really just paying attention to it in my mind's eye, you know? And so that's where my music comes from. And so for me, my music is no frills. It's just me and my guitar. I can't overproduce my music. It's practically impossible because, you know, it's like adding sparkles to a journal. I just wouldn't do that. You know, I would like to write down my thoughts and just have my thoughts really plainly there for me to see and for me to understand. So, so I was sitting there and I played the guitar, and I did it 4 times through, and on the 4th take, I really liked it. And, I mastered it, and I went on my little production thing and made sure the reverb was nice and made sure the levels were nice, and I bounced it. And bouncing it means to export the audio. And I was really happy with what I did. But it really makes me think. It makes me think, like, why don't I go to a studio? Why don't I, if I want to make a video for it, why don't I hire outside help? You know, why don't I hire people? Or why don't I use some of the connections that I've already known to be able to help me with my overall kind of direction on it? And I'll tell you right now the reason. The reason is because I want it to be solely from my soul. I believe that art and creativity, when humans do it, it's like inked with a part of yourself that cannot be communicated through any other medium. Like, the human soul is so complex. There are so many thoughts and feelings that go behind every single one of our actions. And it's impossible to really talk about verbally. So if I was trying to communicate something to someone else, I'd have to go through a minefield of inner thoughts that I have, inner biases, inner, kind of checks on myself to make sure that what I'm trying to communicate to someone else is really clear. But when it comes to creativity and art, there's something that is in a creative work which speaks to people. And it speaks to people on a subconscious, intrinsic level. It's not about the superfluous stuff like lighting and being cool and the image, etc. That's going to attract people, but it's not going to attract the souls of those people. During my 3 years at university, while I was training as an actor and also training academically in the philosophy of acting and the philosophy of human creativity, one of my favorite authors was called Jerzy Grotowski. I highly recommend people read his book, even if you're not an actor, or read any of his books. The book that I really liked was called Towards a Poor Theatre, and it was basically about the spectator-audience relationship and how that is the most important aspect of any sort of creative work and any sort of performance. So Towards a Poor Theatre was probably my most defining book that helped create who I am as a person in general. I used to do practical studies, so I'd go into a studio and I'd sit and I would, spend time with myself, and I'd do like crazy things to separate me from my natural human ways of doing things, and then I'd take myself to like really calm spots through meditation, through physical action, and I'd really just work on this idea of presence in an individual and what I can communicate to an audience with the littlest that I can possibly communicate. I know a lot of musicians, and I see them on Instagram all the time, and some of them are so talented, and it blows my mind, and it makes me feel like, why am I not doing this? Why aren't I in studios? Why aren't I doing this writing with people kind of thing? And it makes me really question my own creativity and my own musicianship a lot of the time. But as I say, I have to remind myself that I'm not doing any of this to be seen. I'm not doing any of this. I want my music to be heard, but I don't care about fame. I don't care about money. I'm just on this planet to express who I am as a person. Like those parts of my soul which I cannot verbalize, I want to communicate them through my own performance, through my transcendent human spirit. Like one of the biggest, most interesting aspects of my learning at university was talking about tribes and talking about transcendental human ritual, where they would have one member of a tribe who would start dancing, and it would be like an hour long, and this person would just like captivate the audience and whip the audience up into the same emotional plane and spiritual plane as the performer is experiencing. And it's like a burgeoning. And this is what got me onto thinking, hey, this is really interesting. Like, this is exactly like what happens in church. In church, you have hundreds of people who are all singularly focused on a pastor or a priest or someone that's saying, like a leader. And so you have that audience-spectator relationship. And the one thing which separates that from just an average situation in life is every person in that room has a singular focus. They're all singularly focused on the idea of God, the idea of Savior. And so that takes away a lot of the human complication that comes with thought sometimes. And it allows people to lower their barriers and receive what they receive from the priest or from the leader. And that in itself allows human beings to experience this extreme emotional state where their empathy is incredibly heightened, their feelings of rapture are incredibly heightened, and it allows them to really experience a cathartic moment just in church. And I believe that is what attracts people to church. And it's exactly the same thing in football. In football, you have an audience-spectator relationship. You have footballers running around a pitch and scoring with absolute skill, absolute passion, and and it's just so inspiring for the people that are watching. Couple that with having tens of thousands of people in the stand, all singularly focused on the same focal point, all singularly committing the same actions, even if it's subconscious, in a gigantic ensemble. And you have a similar situation that happens within a church. And this happens time and time again throughout all of society. You have these actor or performer spectator relationships. And that's what's most important to me. And that's what was most important to me at university. Because not only does it bring the audience rapture, but it also brings me rapture. I don't know how many people listening to this podcast have done creative things before in their lives. Like if you have done something where you've put yourself on stage, or you've definitely engaged with some sort of creative performance before, and maybe you've felt that part of yourself which just you lose your human restrictions, your thought of how people are seeing you, what you have to do tomorrow, and all that kind of stuff. You lose all of those vulnerabilities, and you're just open spiritually and mentally, and you're open to receive the data from another person. That's like complicated human subconscious experience, and it's so complex to put that in words. There are poets and there are writers who manage to do that very, very well, but it also extends to everything else in music, in acting performances on TV, in theatrical performances, in dance performances. When you see someone out on the street and they're playing their guitar, and it's just for that one day, it's like a transcendent performance, and it just captivates you. And as a human being, you can't help but just watch and stare at that person. That is the essence of human communication to me, and what brings me a lot of joy to both experience and help an audience to experience. So when it comes to my music, the reason why I think that I do everything completely on my own and I don't add outside forces is because to add outside forces, it would have to be a project of multiple years with multiple years of dedication from all the parts of the project to be able to get exactly the same notion of what that we're all trying to communicate. And so, I'm not a huge fan of popular music a lot of the time. I'm not a huge fan of, hashed together TV programs and stuff which comes out so quickly because, I think one of the things that is forgotten in our society is that at the moment is people don't recognize true creativity when it that much anymore. Everything is made for money. Everything is made to get out as quickly as humanly possible. And I just feel that you lose like an element of the human soul in that, and the human communication of the soul. Like back in the day, we had people like Whitney Houston and, Prince, Michael Jackson, people who just really just captured thousands upon thousands, millions of people across the world. Martin Luther King, many figureheads who just captured a gigantic audience for which is just seems absolutely impossible nowadays. And I think it's because a lot of the time it's like companies with loads of money just throw like paint stripper on everything, and they just strip it down to the most basic and quick ways of making something and making more money, and it just takes away from the human soul. So I don't really see art progressing very much and having these transcendental moments which affect humanity in general and help us move along in our own spirituality and our own understanding of the meaning of life and our own understanding of existence, because corporations are just throwing paint stripper on anything and on everything and making it so everything is just bare and you don't see the human soul anymore. I think it's so important to look to your friends and look to your experiences and look to your memories and really think about the human soul and think about how cathartic it is when you relate to someone else on a really spiritual, instinctual, subconscious level without having to really consciously think about it and consciously process it. A huge part of my acting performance back in university was about affecting an audience with the minimal that you can possibly affect them. I did this one performance where I took an excerpt of a play, and it was a Harold Pinter play, and I took an excerpt of it and I got someone to record. I recorded someone speaking this excerpt of a play, and then I invited my whole year to come watch it. It was a performance that I was doing in a studio, and basically all I did was sit there in the studio in plain clothes on a chair and played this recording of a script while I just sat on a chair in a single spotlight, and I had about 100 people watching me. And before I went and I did that performance for an hour, I meditated and I did these physical actions, etc. All the learning that I had done of Jerzy Grotowski and several other practitioners of acting. And I enacted all of those sort of techniques for clearing my mind and making myself permeable so that I can be affected by whatever my circumstances are. So my spotlight blocked out the audience so I couldn't see them, and it was just a single spotlight. I didn't have to do anything. I just sat there pretty much like I'm sitting here now, and then I played the performance, and in that as that recording was played, which I coached the actor who did the voice acting for this audio that I played. As the audio was played, I just sat in a very still way, and over the course of 20 minutes, my whole physicality had entirely changed, dependent on the content of the audio that was playing. That's what I mean. Like, we are such permeable individuals. Everything that we see, everything that we take into our mind affects us in a subconscious way and affects us in a conscious way. And so we have to be very careful that we're not always permeable to all of the things in the world which can sink into us and make us feel worse, dim our worldview, make us see things more negatively, start saying that the world is a terrible place. And what we really need to try and do is grow as people and grow as people and make ourselves see the negative things but process them through a healthy way, and use that same sort of technique to affect our friends and our friends' families and children, to start bring about a new worldview which is about positivity and is about affecting people in a positive way and introducing positive influences in general. Because, you know, as I say, the world is getting stripped of soul. The world is getting stripped of these real human moments, because everything is, the technology is so good. You know, you've got auto-tune. You've got auto-tune now, so you can't hear the intricacies in someone's voice anymore, because it's all being cut out, because it's an imperfection. In society, we're just cutting out imperfections left, right, and center, and making everything as perfect as it possibly can be, when it's in the imperfections that you start to realize the soul. When someone's singing like Otis Redding, and you hear all the little wobbles in his voice, and those wobbles indicate a state of feeling that he's currently experiencing, and that state of feeling and the wobble and the tension in that voice communicates to our bodies on a subconscious level, and we understand each other further. I know this is a little bit of a ramble, but what I'm trying to say is, you know, we have real capacity in general to be able to really affect one another and affect people on a really much grander scale, and really create a situation where we're all growing and we're all having these cathartic experiences, and then that will help push down negativity, push down and make us, raise up and make us stronger to be able to make better choices and have better friends and more truthful conversations, and generally help people be much happier people. That's my honest belief. I used to really believe that I was going to change the world with my acting. Like any other 22-year-old, 23-year-old, I really used to believe that I was going to change the world with my acting and my performance and my world philosophy. And then I got older, and in all honesty, I got a little stupider. And all of a sudden it felt like it was an impossible thing for me to be able to do. You know, there are things that I definitely need to do. I need to become more well-read. I need to understand things in a more complex way. And but overall, I think that my subconscious way of behaving is pretty good and is pretty beneficial for not only myself, but the people that are in my life. And as I say, that journey is the most important journey to me, to be able to leave the world a better place than when I came. And I don't know about you guys, but I would much prefer to see some more solid experiences in my life of the human soul, and connecting with that human soul and experiencing those same experiences I've experienced as a spectator and as a performer. And so when it comes to my creativity, I like to just strip it down, no frills. I don't want to entice an audience with something extra. I want to entice an audience from being so calm and in that place of communicating, of being able to communicate who I am, and entice them with that on a physical, uncomfortable level. But I think that's all I have to say for this week. As I say, I've had a long day. And I have produced something, and I've got a smile on my face because I've produced something, and I've communicated a little bit of my soul. But yeah, as for this podcast, it's definitely going to be a little of a short one today. I'm just going to keep it up week by week, and so I get better at it and I keep doing it. I'm taking my last sip of tea right now. This is Tea Time with Jamie, and thank you all for sending me messages and talking to me about every episode. It's really been quite amazing, as I say, and this will be going on my YouTube channel. and you'll be able to see me talk about it on my YouTube channel. I think you're all wonderful people, and I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. And if you're not, head up. It's going to get better. Just really think about why you're not having a good time, and think about if there's anything that you can do to be able to prevent those thoughts and feelings. First step, exercise. Second step, find something that you love that you can do easily. Third step, I would say reach out to friends, but if you don't have those friends, then go back to exercise. Exercise, find something you love. Small steps, don't be hard on yourself. I love you all. Thank you very much. This is Tea Time with Jamie.